Hello, welcome to another Crash MotoGP podcast post the America's Grand Prix, which saw, spoiler alert, Marc Marquez take his second win of the season ahead of Fabio Quartararo and Pecco Bagnaia. We'll, of course, be discussing just how they did it. Plus, will we ever return to the Circuit of the Americas next year after nearly all the riders stated the track surface needs to be changed, otherwise they will not be coming back. A look at Moto 2 and another scary incident in Moto 3 whereby some miracle all the riders involved walked away. Keith and Pete are ready to roll, so let's get into it. Keith, shall we? And let's start, I think, at the top with our winner, Marc Marquez. Need I remind you both, Pete actually had him down for the win, but I don't think anybody expected him to do it in such a dominant style by 4.5 seconds, I think it was by the end.
He's such a smart bottom, that Pete, isn't he? Hey? But at the end of the day, it was a very good call. I mean, it's a situation where fitness on a track like that, and it was even more impressive considering the state of the circuit, and now you're having to motocross across it. I mean, like, for a man who's supposed to be weakened in some way, shape or form, like he is, to ride like he did was damned impressive. The track was in terrible order. It's been in terrible order for years. You know, the fastest lap ever done round there was back in like 2014 or something. So the fact is the track is deteriorating. Now, there's been all sorts of reasons about it being because it was done on clay shrinks so the track moves with it and so on and so forth. But I was reading an article that Jarno Cefelli put out, the guy who's the head of Dromo, who sorted out Silverstone, has sorted out various other tracks around the world, Sepang being one of them as well, quite a famous one that was in a bit of trouble. Comes up with some quite good ideas. I mean, he fixed Argentina as well, Termas de Rio Hondo. I think he did that place, which is a renowned track. We all love it out there, and the riders do as well. He didn't seem to be of the impression that the subsoil, if you like, was the big cause of it. He's just basically in code, as these guys would be, is they made a crap job of laying the top surface on whatever there was there. You know, when you take the top surface off, you see what the subsurface is, you sort that out, and then you lay the top on it. Silverstone, if you remember, and I know Pete will, and Harry, I'm sure you will as well, the big deal there was they were saying because it was built over the old runways and the old concrete slabs, that was the reason why you'd got the movement that you'd got there and the ripples. And Cefelli, no, if you use the right contractors and the right material, you get the surface you want. And Silverstone seems to have stood up since Dromo got involved, since Cefelli's company got involved. It just seems like there may have been a corner cut somewhere early on when they laid the track, and they've tried to patch it ever since, and it hasn't worked. I mean, they diamond cut it at one time, if you remember, and then, multi-million-pound motorbikes were shot blasted for the first 2 days. Everything was destroyed, the front of the forks, the front of the fairing, millions of pounds worth of damage done to MotoGP bikes, among others, just because they hadn't cleaned it up properly. Big dust storms behind every bike that was going down that back straight, which isn't a straight. So the problem is there's no money. Circuit of the Americas, COTA, the big, best track in America, really. Indy's not that exciting. Laguna Seca, you can't do anything with it. It's in a park, which means you can't take a tree out or cut a bank away to make it safe. You've only really got COTA, but it needs millions of pounds spending on it, and that they don't have. It's looked like it's teetering on the edge of failing for some time, and slap them with a new surface. And we know that Dorna, despite the fact they want to be in America, it's crucial for them to be in that market. We've seen that they can be quite ruthless, and they will dump a track off the edge if you're not going to resurface it when all the riders are about to riot.
So do you think that's a serious thing where we will not return if things are done, if things aren't done?
100%. That would be my view of it, yes. You can't keep... As you might know, not that you'll care, but I was doing the old BSB at the weekend, again, from Donington Park, and we had a bit of rain there, and the guys were falling down in a straight line on the brakes in certain areas where there'd been a bit of overbanding and the odd patch here and there. You didn't get a rider revolt. I've got to say that Stuart Higgs, race director, Jonathan Palmer, obviously the leaseholder for that place for 21 years since 2017, they got their heads together, and we had reasonable weather on the Sunday, so it was okay. But the fact is that there has been now a warning shot fired at Donington. We've had warning shots fired at the Red Bull Ring for exactly the same thing. That when a rider can't find the grip at the front end when you're braking into a corner, that's dangerous. Yeah, tracks are slippery. We all know that. If it's consistent slipperiness all the way around and so on and so forth, then that's fine. But when you've got a no-chance situation that you can save a motorbike in a straight line, then there is a problem. With COTA, you've got these bumps. Honestly, to ride the way they were having to ride over them, front and rear wheels leaping off the ground, it was like a supercross in places at 120 plus mile an hour in some places. It's asking too much of the bike and the riders, and it's demeaning our sport. Our sport is accuracy. It's not about getting over a load of lumps. It's it's using a road race bike as a motocross bike. It's not about that. It's about being able to use the tools properly. And COTA will be in trouble next year, and I'm absolutely sure that they will have to resurface at least from turn 1 right the way down to turn 11. I think they were talking about to get it right.
Yeah,
or we won't be going back.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how it unfolds, won't it, Pete? Because, I mean, some of the riders, I think, were even tempted to try and almost boycott it perhaps this weekend, weren't they? A few speaking out, but not really any traction there. Some calling to try and shorten the length of the race this weekend, but that was kind of laughed off, apparently. But still, they did start the race. No major incidents as a result of the bumps, it seemed to be. But and the top 3 sort of coming out on top there. What were the riders' reactions as well throughout the weekend? Were there any saying post-race, actually, that, well, we got through it, but still, we're not coming back?
I think it was a bit of shock on the first day. I think that's, obviously as the weekend goes on, they can work on the bikes and they can, they get experience of the track, things like that. So they can kind of make the best of it, if you like. As you say, after the first day, certainly Aleix Espargaro made clear if there was a vote held, he would say, I'm not racing. And he went on to fall, I think it was 5 times over the weekend. So, he had a miserable time. But, there were other guys, as always, Jack Miller, the guys that are fast will say, well, it's okay. Jack, as we know, is a renowned off-road rider, and I can't help but think that Keith mentioned Supercross. I mean, Jack's got plenty of knowledge of launching a bike at big bumps and lumps, and I think he probably just dealt with it better in terms of some riders seem to go in a circle in that they might soften the bike to try and deal with the bumps, but then it makes them slower, and then they end up stiffening it again, and they end up sort of back where they are, where they began. But I think Jack just sort of, you can't get round them. That, as Keith was saying, the problem is where these bumps are located. It was in some really fast corners, some of the most quickest corners on the track, and there's no way to sort of avoid them. You have to just sort of make the best of hitting them and hold on. I mean, Brad Binder was saying the G-forces when you were hitting these undulations is what they almost call them. It's not sort of a normal bump, is what the riders say. But yeah, they all got through it okay. Nobody, as we saw, no one actually fell in the race, thankfully, on the bumps and took everyone else out, which was obviously a worry earlier on. But so yeah, everyone got through it. Marc Marquez somehow dealt with all of these bumps and even with his physical condition and dominated. I picked him for the win, but I certainly wouldn't have picked him to win by 4.5 seconds in that way. I mean, that was exceptional. And but again, the bumpy track, it's a Marquez sort of thing again, isn't it? Where it's that sort of street fighter riding style of just manhandling the bike around. And it's good to see from his physical point of view that he can go the distance on such a tough track. I mean, yes, it's an anti-clockwise track, but it's such a long track, 20 corners, that there's probably more right-hand corners than there are in a lot of clockwise tracks. So, it was a real test for him. He's come out of this well. He's now got 2 wins on anti-clockwise tracks. We saw him have the 4th place in Misano, so that was the best he's done on a clockwise track. Let's see if he can, finish the season. Portimao coming up will be an important test for him. That was where he came back at the start of the year, a really twisty right-hand track. We'll be going back there in a couple of races. How much better will his shoulder be? It'll be a good comparison for him, especially to see, how much he has improved. It's step by step. He's a long way off being fully fit, but, it's another victory. It's a big boost for him. And, he's obviously looking to next year now. I mean, it's make what you can of this year. There's a lot of work being done on Marc, on the bike. And, this is another boost for them, a reward for them on what's been, a pretty punishing year, really, for Honda and Marc.
What was impressive with Marc was what he did. He waited until the tyre dropped off so it would slide around. He didn't use it when it was at its grippiest because he knew that could be dangerous and flick him off. I was amazed at that. I mean, obviously we weren't in Texas, so you couldn't see it firsthand or understand it firsthand. But when he explained after the race what he'd done, and we could see how he waited for that tyre to drop off, the grip level to drop off, so that he could manage it sliding better. It suited his style. It suited the safety aspect of things better once it had lost some of its grip. I mean, how often you hear a rider say that? Normally complaining like merry hell about drop-off. So it was really, really very impressive. When he went to Portimao, I don't think he'd been to Portimao before, had he? It was the first time he'd been there as well. So it was a new track on really trick track as well, Portimao. So this time around, he's got all the data as well, and with this kind of form that he's pulling at the moment, Misano next up as well, tell you what, he's on for a really bright end of season, I think, Marc Marquez. Start betting on him, I feel.
Yeah, why would you leave him out of your top three? What idiot would do that in their predictions? God knows. I'll tell you who I didn't leave out of my top three though. Fabio Quartararo, because you'd be a fool as well to leave him out, wouldn't you? And to be fair, I think when Marquez got in the lead and started edging out, it kind of became a little bit of a sedated race, especially in the top half.
It was boring, Harry.
Oh well,
yeah,
you can say that. I'm playing the field.
It was a boring race. And I think Quartararo was really happy to take 20 points out of it. Really happy to take 20 points out of it.
He said it's his best second place ever, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the nature of that track as it was. I think, bravery. I think they're all coming away at the end of the day happy to have took what they took out of it, the top guys. Bagnaia now, he's got an uphill struggle to be able to do anything with that. I thought Bagnaia, I thought Jack Miller. I can't remember which order I put everybody in when we did our predictions last time around, but nobody could have predicted the track to be in such appalling condition. And when it comes down to bravery rather than skill, look at Valentino. Last time he goes to Texas, that was one of the worst rides you've ever seen. But why would you want to push your luck at his age, child on the way, all the things he's got to look forward to now? Why would you? And I think that there are varying degrees of that through the grid. Aleix Espargaro, you're right. 5 times I think he fell over. If you fall over once, it doesn't matter if it's at 30 mile an hour, you hurt yourself. I think it's a kind of misconception that most people watching TV, see these guys roll over, airbag pops up and away you go, it's no big deal. Sometimes that's true. Most times that's not true. You pull a ligament, you twist an arm, you get a clouting. You fall over at 30 mile an hour and you get that. So 5 times, he must feel like he's been through a tumble dryer.
I think you make a very valid point there. And you mentioned Jack Miller, of course. I think it's worth touching on him as well because, he looked like the man to beat at one stage throughout the weekend. And then it kind of all came apart throughout qualifying, but, had a great rise up through the grids during the early parts of the race. What did you make of Miller's form during the race? And then equally, what did you make of the little letting Bagnaia through? Was that team orders, do you think? Or was it more of a just go, mate, I'm not in this fight?
He hadn't got the pace. I think it would have been a mixture of both. There's no way that he would have held up Bagnaia unnecessarily in that situation. He did it very neatly, did it very respectfully. I don't think it was a major problem. I don't have a problem with team orders when we're getting to this stage of the year. Sometimes you just have to put them out there, particularly if you're holding up, if you're making it hard work. Poor old Jack. I did like the bit with him and Joao Mir at the end of it all. I thought that's going to turn out a bit. You saw Mir giving it a bit of that, sorry. But Miller weren't having any of it because they'd already had a bit of form. There'd already been a little bit of form between them. So I'm glad Jack didn't whack him, but I thought that might be coming. When he got hold of his helmet, that's like, I can't think of the equivalent. I think it's probably like getting hold of someone in the nether regions when you get hold of someone by the front of their, it's like, this is serious, mate.
Well, it was it was certainly a bit of a fractious end to Miller's race, and
he got his place back though.
He did get his pace back. We should say that actually, yes, because Mir did get a penalty, and that did force him to drop down a place.
Although of course Bastianini got by them both.
Well, yes, great little ride from Bastianini, who didn't get much airtime actually. So I think it went a little bit unnoticed almost to the casual viewer. But what a ride again for Bastianini.
He's been pretty impressive, Bastianini, over the last couple of Grand Prix, I've got to say. And gifts like that don't often come your way. It's getting close to Christmas. I'm sure he appreciated it.
Absolutely. While we're on Miller, and we'll just hop across to Pramac, shall we? And equally, What happened at the end for Jorge Martin, that little skirt across the runoff area? Do you think that was also a genuine mistake? Because I know there was some debate on that as well. And then, of course, he did get a long lap penalty.
It wasn't. I mean, I think at the top, you could see he just had a little bit of a bobble and he picked it up and went down there. I think genuinely it was a mistake. It was, and he had to take to that. But you still have to give up a certain amount of time, and he didn't. So at the end of the day, he got a penalty. So both things. It wasn't. That wasn't an attempt at team orders. I think he'd have played it a little bit neater than that and a little bit more intelligently than that. But and just there, it's bloody fast coming down that hill. So to make it look like the thing had lost grip and he was giving it to a teammate, I don't think that. I think it was unfortunate, but again, he was showing great form, wasn't he, on a difficult track?
Yeah, I think he's still suffering a bit, isn't he, from these injuries earlier in the year. And as you said earlier, such a physical place, COTA. And so certainly by the closing laps of the race, it's no surprise to see he's starting to struggle a bit to hold on to the bike. Tyres that have lost their grip, and it just let go, and that was that. And then, he just got caught out like many riders with, the instinct is, obviously, you go off track, you want to get back on as quick as possible, don't you? And he just went a bit too fast and got that one-place penalty. But I think Bagnaia would have got by him anyway, so I don't think it really changed the outcome.
No, well,
Ducati will have been pleased anyway. It'll definitely be on their Christmas card list. I
think Ducati have a fair few cards to write this year. Someone who did seem to be struggling perhaps as well, coming back from injury, Franco Morbidelli, last of the runners, the classified runners, and just looked to be quite off the pace and considering to become more and more off the pace as the race went on. And that looked like he was just, probably in quite a lot of pain, do you think? He finished behind Petrucci about 40, nearly 50 seconds behind the leaders. So what do you make of Morbidelli's run? He's still got a long way to go, hasn't he?
He's intelligent. He's not going to risk it at a place like COTA. That could go spectacularly wrong. The Yamaha, best Yamaha, Quartararo. Nobody seems to make it go like Quartararo does at the moment. Why would you risk an injury this time of the season that you've got to get over during the winter? I think that Morbidelli just rode prudently in the situation he was in. Stone last, though. You would still expect him to have a little bit more pace than that, or I would.
Yeah, and you look again, as you say, second best Yamaha is Dovizioso in 13th place. I mean, it's the gulf between Quartararo and the other Yamahas is quite incredible, isn't it? And it's just the difference between someone riding right at the top of their game, and then you've got the other guys who are either unfamiliar with the bike, battling injuries, etc., etc. And I mean, Yamaha have got a fight on their hands in terms of the other two championships, of course. I mean, Ducati have now taken the lead of the teams and the constructors. So, Quartararo, he can give Yamaha the riders' title. He can probably give them the constructors because that's just the top finishing rider from each manufacturer. But talking to Morbidelli, they're going to hope that Morbidelli will be getting in the points in his last races to help them get this team's title back from Ducati with Miller and Bagnaia being so consistently matched at the top.
Yeah, team thing makes a big difference to manufacturers, doesn't it? Manufacturers' trophies are more important to the manufacturers than any riders' world championship. It's always heralded by the manufacturers, and the rest of us don't take any notice of it. Seems a bit of a shame, really. But that's how it is. I mean, we're all interested in rider championships, where manufacturers are obviously more interested in the manufacturer's pot. But there you go. Each to their own, I suppose.
Just the way it is, isn't it? Sometimes we've had a question come in actually from Sleepwalker 8600. Thank you for your question, Sleepwalker. Who wants to bring up Taka Nakagami. Says, poor old Taka, he just can't seem to get on the podium at all. And it did seem like Nakagami was really showing some aggressive fight in the opening stages, where perhaps he hasn't previously done that so often. But ultimately, it quite literally slid away from him. He still came home 17th in the end, ahead of Petrucci and Morbidelli. But I mean, well, poor old Taka.